wasn't a fluke, that he is consistently one of the world's best Terran. It's kind of at stake right now.
Yeah, I think though that this is going to be a bit of a return to reality for this group. That's how I see it. We've had a very, very wild and weird day in Group A, but here we are. In the bottom right, we have the blue Sarga player representing appears to be the Afrika Freaks. He is Armani.
In the top left, as the red Terran, he is Team Liquid's Clem. He just took down Maru so convincingly. I mean,
We clapped him.
yeah, exactly. It is just such a weird thing to say. I mean, I know we keep on bringing up like, oh, Maru like online is always a bit questionable, and it is. Like, I think Maru online is always going to be a bit more in question, despite any previous good results, like the King of Battles that happened recently. Just because, I mean, his offline performance, him in a GSL, just feels like there is something magical there, right?
Yeah. Could you just imagine if people would go to the same lengths to make excuses for other players, though? Just imagine how silly that would look. It is quite funny to think about.
Isn't it though? That, like, okay, for me personally, right, coming off of the Maru like online versus offline, like clearly he can do well. He's gotten through like qualifiers online before as well, like really, really powerful qualifiers. Thinking back to like those old IEMs where like Flash was playing, you know? It was really powerful, and he would still get through. But I just remember, you know, back in the days of a community caster, where you got all excited because the mainstream for once doesn't want to cast Maru, and we're like, yes,
oh yeah,
we get the chance.
That was always
it's
the
gonna happen.
Day.
And then it's like 2 Raxes, and we're like, cool, amazing. So maybe I just set myself up for disappointment with this guy. No, anyways, we're talking about old news actually at this point. Maru is not going to be continuing his performance in the season finals. We're gonna have to see him again, I'm sure, next year in the GSL, and he's going to be once again very powerful. But we move on to talk about these two guys, Clem versus Armani. First time today we get to see Clem's TVZ, but we know what it looked like on Sunday, and it looked really, really good.
Yeah, this is a good test for Clem. You know, all kind of analysis and debate about abilities aside, this is an important test because, as we were saying, I don't think that most people would disagree with this statement. And if you disagree, please let me know. But most people would probably agree that like Cyril or Raynor, or especially Raynor, might be like the best Zerg player in the world by a pretty significant margin. Just kind of claps everybody that he goes up against, hardly ever loses. And for Clem to be able to overcome him, I think the big fear is that you don't want him to, and this, I really don't mean this as an insult to Armani, but you don't want to play down to your opponent's level just because you're playing someone that you wouldn't say is as good as Raynor, for example. And that's something that I think is a big trap that players can fall into. If you kind of take away some of the special preparation that you might have specifically done for a player like Raynor, and then Armani just does something and you're like, oh my God, nobody ever does this build. And like you're suddenly behind, you got caught off guard by some like Ling Ravager type rush or whatever it is that you just didn't think this guy would do. And some of that extra fire you had because you were playing in the big EU finals is gone. And you struggle a little bit to get that magic. And I think that's probably got to be the most important thing to keep an eye on for this is, can Clem maintain the consistency, right? Can he continue to put up this high level TVZ that he has beaten into everybody's heads with that wonderful performance in the EU finals? And if he can, then this should be an absolute stomp of a match, and it's going to look really good. This is going to shoot Clem's stock up quite a bit. But I tell you what, you got plenty of people that were just waiting, literally just salivating at the mouth, Zombie Grub, for the opportunity to say that Cyril was washed up and not good. Those people are all idiots. But I tell you what, there's a bunch of, you know, salivating at the mouth hyenas watching Clem, waiting to say, see, this guy's not all that. He got a lucky break. Oh. And yeah, no, that's how it is though. People love tearing down the people that get success from time to time, and I think for Clem, it is a test to maintain that. If he gets upset here, I think that would be a pretty big disappointment.
I was agreeing with you. It already happened, is what I was owing up.
Oh, okay. Well, there it is.
There you go. By the way, Clem has been playing a spectacular game so far. As Reaper lives multiple times, kills a couple creep tumors. Now he gets a Spore Crawler kill, not cancel. Clem also went for a very strong opener on this game. Armani did throw down another Roach Warren, but he also did it with Overlord Scouting again, so kind of like game 3 versus Maru. He saw the Banshee, he saw the committal to Banshee, and was like, nah, never mind, cancels the Roach Warren. Clem, no doubt, at least quickly surveying the VOD if he wasn't straight up just watching the games while waiting for his own game versus Neeb. clearly was seeing how Armani likes to play. That said, I really don't mind Armani doing that, you know? I think it's a bit awkward, certainly for the build. You know, they have to cancel a Roche Warren after making room for the Roche Warren. And then, you know, you have gas still being mined. Maybe you wouldn't have. You're doing more of a super macro build. I actually kind of like that he just gives himself that choice. Doesn't work here. The game goes on. He goes into fast Spire, which does kind of make the Terran player with the Banshees go like, oh man, because I don't think Clem would know that he actually did stop a Roach Warren. What he sees is a Spire, and he has Banshees that haven't done much damage yet, so he's probably not happy with this result. But if he checks the build order after the game, he's going to be very happy that he denied that he forced Armani to change his plans.
Yeah, and that's one of those tricky things. Like, you don't always necessarily see the impact that your choices have on your opponent when they're thinking about how they want to play the game out. So you know, avoiding that kind of like psyching yourself out is also definitely a big factor. But the fast Spire has a lot of benefits in that way, is that you can shut down plays like that. It gives you an insurance policy against like a battle cruiser opening, for example, or even a Hellbat attack at times. Although, you know, sometimes Hellbats want to run into those types of builds for exactly that reason, that there's not much else ready for it. But we get past that very opening stage. Third command center is going to land, and the Mutalisks are going to come out. Armory is on the way, well timed with the 1-1. I feel like this isn't the fastest Baneling nest we've ever seen, but with the fast Mutas, if you can keep the opponent away, you should have time to research that upgrade.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about it, but it's a good point. Like, it's definitely not going to finish by the time the drops happen, or maybe even a push. As this is light shade, it's pretty quick from third base to fourth base here for Armani, and there's not a whole lot of creep spread. The Mutas are going to find the army, and now going to be used in a defensive capacity, and this is where that late centrifugal hooks is suddenly very worrying. He wanted to buy more time. He's going to try to do so now, but I think he's got to just let that fourth base go.
Yeah, I don't see any way that you're going to stop this. I really like the retaining of the Hellions. I think this was a big factor in the development of the TVZ meta recently for the top guys, was keeping those alive, not risking throwing those away. This is an exposed factory that was being built over there too. He really is trying to get the most damage done while he sets up to deal with this push. But Baneling speed is not yet ready. He's going to split the Hellbats off to the mineral line. And this gets really tricky, because if he splits those Hellbats properly with these chokes, you have to burn through so many of your Banelings to clear this out, that Marine push with the tanks becomes just that little bit more terrifying. But Clem says, okay, I don't want to put all my chips in the basket right now. I'm going to pull back. Killing the fourth hatchery is plenty enough for me. Armani's probably restarted it on the other side, so he'd rather set up, keep those units alive, and then bring it all together for another big push on the top side of the map.
That was still very good for Clem. Armani was supposed to have a little more creep spread. He was supposed to have threatening Baneling speed, kind of like posturing like, oh, I could definitely defend if you move in too far. And instead, he just had to let it go. In his run by, didn't really do very much. The Mutas found very little success. Lings were denied by the Banshees that are still alive and actually now very healthy. So Clem now pushes to the other fourth base, figuring correctly that his opponent would have taken that. You need a fourth for sure. Armani might have to play a bit of the refugee Zerg here. They're just like, cancel hatcheries, don't try to save them. Okay, let's let that one go. But if you don't try to save them, then you've lost 350 minerals. If you do try to save them, you've lost that, plus whatever you tried to save it with. You know, Baneling's exploding, Muta's going down, and that makes it even worse than just giving it up.
Yeah, So the big thing that I've also been kind of eyeing on while this has been happening, Zombie is those upgrades too, because the 1-1 is only just now finally going to finish for Armani, but Clem's 2-2 is almost ready, and he's got drilling claws coming in. These Mutas and those run-bys that we're talking about not being able to find much purchase, they need to get on a roll here. A denial of drilling claws would definitely be a big win at almost, what, like 99% that gets shut down. Absolutely beautiful play on the part of Armani to just take a little bit of the steam out of this engine so that Clem can't just completely power through. We know that drilling claw upgrade is very important. However, there's still a good amount of siege tanks. The 2-2 is still about to finish with that vehicle plating level 1. That's going to make all these mech units just a little bit more sturdy. So I don't think that Armani's out of the woods yet. Clem's got a supply lead, which is a product of him keeping his forces together. He didn't throw a bunch of Marines away on silly big drops. Not that they have to be silly, but Armani's got so many units and mutas around, it would be quite hard to try and take that fight normally.
Oh my god!
Widowmines can't pearl very quickly, and the Marines are all kind of choked up here.
Ooh, yeah, I think he tried to pull back, and then the tanks blocked them. So they ran forward trying to go around the bend. That actually almost just killed Clem's momentum. I don't think it killed him, but it certainly not the fight he was actually hoping for. Those tanks being found in that position, having the siege there was probably the worst case scenario. Clem still has to play, he still gets to play the rest of the game, but that, I feel like, was actually even going to be a killer push with his upgrade lead, with his Marine count. And now he might even lose the push and his 4th CC. Okay, it's going to drop mules and save it, but Armani really showing how powerful he is in this matchup. I mean, he starts these games off, doing a bit of a risky build the mutas and being like, well, if he doesn't do damage to the mutas, he's going to be in trouble. No upgrades, leader cyclical hooks, blah, blah, blah. And it's a little scary, but he actually pushes through and then uses his mutas so damn well. I mean, that main base denial of the drilling claws also came with the loss of a reactor, and I don't even think he lost a muta. Like, he has some pretty damn good muta control.
Yeah, the muta control's been tight thus far. There's 1 or 2 getting shaved off here as this army approaches, and it's a maxed out Terran ball. This is actually really important to keep in mind. One of those depots was lower, so those banelings may have a little bit of free, easy access to the mineral line, and they do. That's definitely an oversight on the part of Clem. He's going to replace that supply with more bio, though, as it continues to come out. And hey, these Widow Mines burrowing slow. I feel like that might have been a bit of a factor in that last fight. They don't have the same opportunity to get a shot off before they're killed because of that denial from earlier, but this is still going to be one of those sieges that's so hard to stop. I'm just waiting to see like a scan, right? There's still a little bit of creep tumors that are out here making this position defensible. And there we go, gonna clear that out. Big Daddy Thor says, bring on the banelings, lay them all into me, and if that happens, then Clem's gonna have a really, really nice spot. So the Thor does get overrun, but the Marines are pretty split off creep zombie grub. A beautiful concave setup by Clem. And now he's up 30 supply with a ton of Marines left over. Yeah, the Muta's probably going to get these siege tanks, but I think we're past the phase of the game where that's the biggest deal for Clem. He's also going to drop in the top right.
That is going to be dealt with quickly, but the loss of a 5th base is actually still pretty brutal at 13 minutes, closing in on anyways. He might get a counter cancel, I guess. Like, yeah. Oh, no, he's going to go. Oh, no, oh, God. Went in for the SCDs. Still going to get the cancel, but, oof, yeah. A little bit over eager. Now, Armani's also going to set up on the top right, or maybe she's on the medevac, but I wouldn't mind attempts to run by into the 3rd after that. Armani still needs to buy more time. Marinas, no, the Mutas! Oh, already so weak. Fine Marines. Oh, that's so devastating. He's down to 10 Mutas. That's really not that much of a harassment force.
When you lose your big army, and then your plan to recover is to build more of your specialist units to try and delay your opponent from moving out again, and those specialist units get caught and killed, well, adding 7 mutas now is not going to be a tide turner because he doesn't have 20 mutas. He's not going up to 30 or 40 mutalists. He's trying to get back towards that number that can be worth considering, like even just looking at them. But there's so few banelings here. The splits from Clem are, it's just trivial, honestly. He has plenty more than he needs to wrap this up. There's just all the gas went into mutas, and the mutas died. GG. Clem takes game number 1.
He is the Blue Zerg Armani.
And his opponent in the southeast position here of Romanta's side, the Red Terran player from Team Liquid, he's Clem. I think that boils down to it though, right? He had the awareness to kind of recognize, hey, if I split some Marines off in this direction, if the mutas were trying to avoid my army, they might go this way. Like in StarCraft, probably the hardest thing to get across to like the audience when we're commentating a game is just how much muscle memory is involved with everything that happens. You know, high-level StarCraft versus mid-level StarCraft is largely the automation of a lot of the basic things. And that's a really, really crude way to simplify it. But it is true that a lot of those small maneuvers, they're like, oh, wow, this was so smart. This was so good. You train yourself to do this by playing hundreds of games, and you iterate on that, and you improve it by playing against people who are doing the same thing. And they're like, okay, well, this is what all these guys do, so I'm going to make these adjustments game over game. And those all become built in. They become natural, knowing where you want to push. That's one of the most fun things about new seasons is players kind of have to map out where they're going to do certain things on certain maps, because you have to kind of reprogram that muscle memory a little bit. And when you can flawlessly kind of go through all of those steps, you give yourself the breathing room to consider, okay, I've got all the basics covered. I've got the army I need. I've got the production. Now all I need to do is make sure my opponent's not doing anything weird or going to catch me off guard. And Clem just did it perfectly. Like the one thing he was thinking about mutas, he had all the setup for, and that was Armani's ace in the hole. He didn't have much going for him other than the opportunity to create a bit of magic with those mutas. He got the first early strike on the tech lab on an SCV or two, but at the end of the day, it just didn't end up being enough. And I think that a big part of that is just that Clem plays so much TVZ. You know, that's, if you think Armani's played it, like if he's practiced the ZVT kick 1,000 times, Clem's done it 5,000 times because he has to compete with Raynor and Cyril.
He does. I mean, that's where you're always going to be brought to in these brackets. You're eventually going to find them, right? Whereas, I mean, for Armani, yes, it's usually you're going to find Maru, but let's be real, Armani wasn't making it to Maru in a lot of the previous GSLs. He was dying in the group stages. Armani really has changed, though. I mean, it's one thing when a player kind of comes up with a new style or is just finding a lot of successful cheeses, and another when they play these long macro games and utilize the same tools as some other people, yet they still do better off. Like that's just impressive. That's just him being a better player, which I think he is nowadays.
Yeah.
It's just that he is now facing that guy who has been tested multiple times in very high stress scenarios, multiple like championships or semifinals against the world's best Zerg. So Armani's no slouch. It's just that Clem really is one of the best, and he's trying to prove right here in the season finals this entire week. I guarantee Clem's gonna be proving that he is maybe the best going to the finals. Maybe need to fix his TVP a little bit, right? But otherwise, other matchups look great.
Yeah, I mean, my personal favorite approach to when we get these awesome storylines with like Clem overcoming a Raynor, you know, and these types of things, getting that tournament win. There's a lot of different ways to look at it with like, oh, is this guy, did he have a bad day? Is he slumping? Is Terran OP? Is this meta bad? Whatever. I prefer to take the angle of, I think Clem's reached that next level. I think that's what we've been talking about. That's what we've built up literally this whole year, is that his results have improved season over season. Much like we talked about Estrella with his results that were improving season over season. And he had that, you know, that phenomenal run in the War Chest Team League. And I love to see that. And it's for me, it's less of a, oh, like, what could you do in this situation as Armani? And more of a, Clem is asserting himself as that very dominant, strong Terran player that we've seen all year. It's just that he's actually reached that point now where if he brings it out consistently, he doesn't struggle against too much. And this is going to be another challenge for him. Armani going for that Worm de la Nidus. He has the spine and the natural. That's it should be a pretty big giveaway that he's doing a tech-based build. However, there's no vision in the southwest of that main base, Zombie Grub.
Does it matter though? Like, this is going to be pure Ling Queen. If Clem
he's gonna have Stim,
he's gonna have Medivacs. Like, if he has time to respond, okay? Like, there's a difference between the Lings jumping on the Marines with everything they've got, and Clem being like, oh, that's what this is, and then like pulling back and bringing his SCVs. Maybe this is exactly what Armani wants him to do. Maybe he's exactly hoping that the Medivac will go across the map, leaving Clem with whatever production has left over, which will not be enough. Production plus 2 Medivacs worth? Yes, that's probably enough. Only one portion of that? No, I'm not sure. And he's going to pull back with the Medivacs. Marines already being killed. SC's already being killed. The Medivacs actually might have to unload on top of Lings. Is this actually going to work?
This is really weird because I actually think that quite a few, there was quite a lot of the Zerglings that died to those 2 Hellions and the Reaper that were pocketed in, but the Nidus is finished inside of that main base. Another Nidus starts up in the natural, and very important to note as well, a lot of stims are going to be forced out of Clem as he's going to be quickly trying to reposition himself around his own base. And I think the 300 IQ move here, because as we were talking about, it's a lot of just Lings and Queens, Zombie Grub, Spine Crawlers, halfway done inside of Clem's base. There are so many transfuses available here. I really don't know what exactly the game plan is, because normally this many Marines against this many Lings, I'd be a little bit concerned. But when you add in, what is that, 8, 9 Queens and 3 Spines, it gets a hell of a lot more difficult very, very quickly. That Siege tank is going to be an MVP player if it's able to help make this hold possible.
Combat Shields is done. He's going to go for it, but the Spine Crawlers are there, as you were talking about. One tank is firing, nothing else. And Clem, I feel like he thinks he's going to win this, but I'm not so sure. I guess the Lings are mostly gone, but the Medivacs also are losing out on their energy. The Queens still trying to do their best with their own DPS. I mean, I feel like he overstayed his welcome just a tiny bit, where maybe just buying more time, pushing that second siege tank forward and dealing with the natural faster would have been the better call. I don't know, but Clem still has some really solid production.
Yeah, I'm surprised that the main base SCVs weren't pulled to help with this. As long as that tank doesn't die, I really did think he was about to kill the tank with those lings early on. Now the SCVs do come out to fight, but as long as that tank is alive, that does create a lot of opportunity to get the cost-effective shots, but the tank shots are actually helping to kill the SCVs a little bit here, which is annoying. The medevacs were actually repositioned to help the SCVs, but another big part of that zombie grub is all those Niduses that were getting started in the natural expansion were forcing a pretty significant number of the Marines to also double back and have to be split, limiting the ability to clean up that big attack. So he's going to kill that worm. He finally kills these ones. He scans that third base, says, okay, there's a handful of drones there, as another Nidus is going to start. And I think there's still even a creep tumor inside the main base. So this was definitely one of those attacks that had crazy game-ending potential. But at the end of it, you've got a Terran on 3 orbitals. The Zerg has no 4th, and there's no upgrades for the Zerg. Bailey Nest is only just now going to be getting underway. And +1 is finishing for the infantry. So I think taking this third right now, again, is a bit adventurous. Armani definitely realizes that he needs to make a play happen to save himself. So that does not get allowed to land. And he's going to keep spreading the creep inside of Clem's base. But how does he stop this attack? I don't see it. He's going to be able to start slow banelings in a little bit. But most of the lings are still out on the field, too.
2 dozen queens. That's how he does it. He doesn't even have that many transfuses, actually. Like, there's 2, maybe 3.
Are queens that good? I've read the forum posts, but I don't think they're true. Clem takes it 2-0.